tui on a great sunny Dunedin day. So yeah, the last couple of weeks we've had a lot of rain. Luckily had a lot of indoor work. But yeah, it's great to see the sun. Been able to get outside with the kids the last couple of days on the bikes and going for some walks. So yeah, it was great. One thing I was going to do today is just talk about probably one of the tools I actually really enjoy to use. The Makita Plunge Saw. So I've been using my Makita Plunge Saw for about 4 years, I think. Prior to that, I was using a sort of a homemade version, which if you wait to the end of this video, you'll see my version of that. How you can actually turn a circular saw into a plunge saw. So yeah, let's get underway and I'll show you some of the features that I like about it. So today I just wanted to go through the Makita DSP 600 plunge saw. I've been using this for the last 5 years, and yeah, really awesome. Why do I use this over a skill saw? Skill saw is great for like doing rough cuts, etc., but plunge saw is great for cutting plywood. Cutting doors. I used to always use a planer to plane the bottom of the doors. Now I always use the plunge saw. Not a cheap investment. One of these in New Zealand, you're talking about $8.50-ish. I'll put the current price at the moment up here somewhere. So yeah, they do cost a wee bit, but they are great. I know Makita's just released a skill saw that's compatible with a track saw. Would I consider going for one of those? Maybe. The reason why I say that is that I wouldn't be taking a plunge saw up onto a roof to cut some rafters or something like that. However, I would use a skill saw up there. But would I take a big skill saw like that could be used as a plunge saw? Probably not. As with me, I use the plunge saw for finishing work, cutting doors, cutting ply, etc., cutting flooring, and then my skill saw I use for more framing cuts, etc. Couple of really cool mods I've done on this recently, thanks to Chocolate Chippy 3D printing in New Zealand. Is this dust cover here comes off to access into the blade. Second thing, don't know if you can quite see it in here, this is a little wee 3D printed piece in here. So this depth stop, which slides up and down like that, is really great. However, it doesn't factor in for your track depth. So what this wee 3D printed piece does is it allows for the thickness of the track so that you don't actually have to work out the depth of the track. It actually does it for you, still leaving you the option to use it without that mod if you ever used it. For me, I always use it on a track, so that mod's a real cool mod for me. I don't really use this with a vacuum. I normally use it with an adapter that goes onto here to a Makita bag. It seems to catch a fair chunk of the dust. I don't have a AWS chip on this, and I don't run a Makita vacuum. My vacuum's corded, so for me, having this cordless means I don't have to set up a lead. If I do in the future get a cordless vacuum, probably would end up using it more with a vacuum, but the dust bag works for me good at the moment. Another really cool tip in here is if you're ever cutting polystyrene, EX pole for underfloor, or even 50mm polystyrene for walls. These are really cool to cut that. Put a dust bag on it or a vacuum, and you don't end up with like white snow everywhere. Anyone who cuts polystyrene knows exactly what I'm talking about. Cut with one of these, heaps less white dust everywhere. I mentioned at the start, homemade plunge saw. Not quite a plunge saw, but basically does the same thing in a sense. So I made this with a bit of marine ply, routed a slot on it, and made it so my skill saw runs on this. So what I did here is I've added a piece of aluminium onto the bottom of a Bosch 185 skill saw, and then I've put this wee aluminium bar that's screwed onto that with screws. These 4 screws here are attached to the base of the skill saw. So I've drilled some holes into the base of the skill saw base and threaded those, and then put some threaded bolts in there. I've also added a bit of a guide here, just to the same thickness as the blade to keep it parallel. This aluminium bar here is parallel to the blade, and then that runs down in this groove here. And so then I'd actually set it up so whatever way you grab the track, you line up this edge with what you're trying to cut, and you run your skill saw down it. So if you look down like that, you've basically got minimal clearance. So with this setup, so this is about a 1400 piece of marine plywood. I've also got a piece of 2440, which enabled me to cut full sheets. I did have some rubber attached on the bottom here. That sort of worked most of the time. So just having these wee rubber strips underneath just stopped it sliding around. So I used this setup for probably nearly 2 years before I actually owned a plunge saw, as this was a cheap version. I already had the skill saw. If I wanted just to use the skill saw again, undo 4 screws, and I've got a 185 skill saw back. And the plywood was actually offcuts and all the bits of metal I had lying around. So basically I had a version of a plunge saw which did very minimal tear out actually, for next to nothing. So that's the quality of the cut. This cut here, this side here was cut with a plunge saw. That side there was actually cut with my DIY plunge saw. So pretty good really. And yeah, that's sort of why I used this for nearly 2 years, till I could actually save up to get a proper plunge saw. It did actually work very well. I guess 2 sort of negative downsides to this is it is corded versus a cordless one. You basically got no dust extraction whatsoever. Dust just goes everywhere. But if you're definitely looking for a cheap way of getting a plunge saw, definitely a good option. You've probably been hearing in the background my wee young apprentice, really taking a big interest in tools at the moment. Only 2.5, but yeah, he's just loving tools, always wants to be around Dad with his earmuffs on, and it's pretty cool. On a wee final note, I've been salvaging some New Zealand native timber, some kauri, and also some remu as well, which I am going to be making an interesting coffee table. So it might be the next episode or coming up. Yeah, I'm going to be doing some wee projects like that over the next wee while.